So in 12 Angry Men, Lumet decided to turn shooting an entire feature film in one room to his advantage, as one of the most dramatic elements was the sense of entrapment that the men felt. The first was over the course of the picture he slowly shifted to longer lenses, starting from the 28 to 40 range and progressing to the 50, 75 and 100 millimeter. This would heighten the feeling of claustrophobia and the walls coming in. The second choice was shooting the first third of the film above eye level, the next at eye level, and the final third of the film below eye level, allowing the audience by the end to see the ceiling closing in. Visually representing progression is a great way to show a character's journey. This kind of approach allows a filmmaker to become more subjective towards the material and ask them to think creatively about how to represent the story. I've always found it extremely useful to isolate a scene and watch it over and over to mine it for detail and understand what's happening visually. Another way is to watch a film but concentrate only on a few specific elements. And it's almost impossible to do this consciously without getting sucked into the film, so it's best that you actually take some elements away. And enter director Steven Soderbergh, who created a version of Raiders of the Lost Ark in black and white and with a replaced audio. I'll link it in the description below. But in his words, the purpose is to watch the movie and think only about the staging. How are the shots built and laid out? What are the rules of movement? What the cutting patterns are? See if you can reproduce the thought process that resulted in these choices by asking yourself, why was each shot, whether short or long, held for that length of time and placed in that order? From watching this myself, you very quickly become accustomed to searching for visual information, and it really shows how masterful Spielberg is. Even in the simplest of scenes, he allows you to follow the story, identify the emotion, and see the power shifts. Or consider taking a film and blurring the image. This is a great way to pay attention to what the light is doing. And it also makes the color palette more evident. Director Sidney Lumet in his book Making Movies, we don't start with the visuals, we start with the story. He says form following function, meaning the style of the picture should follow the understanding of the story. The first critical question he suggests is, what is the story about? This will bring into play the theme and your personal relationship to the material. Leading us to question 2, how shall I tell it? Let's look at The Graduate. What is the story about? Alienation, drifting, being cut off from the world. And number 2, how does Mike Nichols going to tell it? The director is able to build a very specific visual language in which the film can operate. You'll notice how this shot literally keeps Benjamin in his own head, cutting him off from the world. The fish tank and water in general in this film being a visual metaphor for his isolation, and how this shot mirrors this shot, putting the audience deeper into this sense of drifting. And even in the second half of the film, when he becomes more proactive, Nichols uses a long lens for this shot, so that even though Benjamin's running, visually it doesn't feel like he's getting anywhere. He also uses the distance between characters to convey their relationship, whether it's overlapping and overbearing, or distant, or being on different emotional pages. The best character studies are the ones that use this imagery to put you inside a character's experience. I've known people to stop watching Punch Drunk Love halfway through because they were literally anxious from the music and the pace and the awkwardness. It half disappoints me that someone can't finish one of my favorite films, but it also makes me smile, because how many films have that kind of power to get inside an audience's head and get them so riled up in a character's panic? Uncut Gems does it with chaos. Wolf of Wall Street does it with excess and length and story and spectacle. And Birdman's visual choice to make the audience endure the relentless single take won't let us catch our breath. John Cleese talked about this in relation to filming Fawlty Towers. He said, "Never cut away during the building of comedy or farce or tension. Cutting away lets all the air out." And that's Birdman. But what would be the best example of this in film? One of the things about Taxi Driver that is just so magnificent, as I actually do feel that it may be the greatest first-person character study ever committed to film. I mean, I really actually can't even think of a second or a third or a fourth that can even come into contention with it. What is the story about? Self-destruction, isolation, predetermined versus self-directed fate? And how is Scorsese going to tell it? Let's break down the opening moments of the film and see Scorsese's visual language in action. Let's make it black and white, and let's take away the music. The imagery of the New York taxi being born out of the steam, or as Scorsese puts it, coming out of hell, steam hinting at going into a subjective reality. Next is our introduction to our main character, but only his eyes, setting the theme as him as an observer. Then, the water covering the glass blurs and distorts the reality that he sees, never seeing things the way that they truly are. A point-of-view shot of the street, filled with psychological lines, color, streaks of light, another warped view of the city, people populating the streets, reinforcing the motif of steam and blurring the light. Back to his eyes, and after 5 shots we're already in his head. This next shot is a transition shot connecting the steam from the street and fading into the cigarette smoke of the job application scene. Scorsese takes us from our first subjective montage into the first full scene by blurring the lines between Travis's observation and reality. This motif is used throughout, and it disorientates the viewer with an uneasy feeling, and we sink deeper into Travis's trance of the story. The style of subjective storytelling is a reflection of the way Scorsese likes to tell stories. So if you're planning a film, start with the story. Allow the style to follow its function. Let the character's journey and theme inform the visual choices. Forget the rules. You're only limited by your imagination and creativity and what you can put inside the frame. And never underestimate the power of an image and the feeling you get from this shot to this shot. And even this shot. The imagery is designed to provoke the audience sense of what's going on internally for a character. This can be done so effectively that certain shots can embody the entire story in a microcosm of a single image. The Graduate, The Wrestler, and Lost in Translation. A picture is definitely worth 1,000 words, and when those words are internal thoughts and feelings, it really encapsulates cinema's ability to convey a wealth of information with minimal screen time. Just think about the opening of Up. There's basically an entire film worth of information before the film. Or a more subtle example would be the opening of Shame. The overhead shot of a man alone in bed, implying judgment. The off-centered framing showing mostly emptiness, perhaps his internal state, or perhaps a visual hint at a long-gone partner. His first action foreshadows the entire film. Even though he leaves, the camera stays. His mind is trapped in the bed, the visual symbol for his addiction. And despite his best effort to shine light on this part of himself, shown by the metaphor of him opening the blinds, the light will ultimately expose his true nature and result in, cue the title, Shame.